Hey y'all, Moses here. Been a hot minute. How are you doing? Today we have had a couple of leaks come out. You've already heard about them. I'm late to this party because I wanted to think about it a little bit without just, jumping to get the first video out or whatever. Uh, and I guess we'll just, if you haven't heard, we have had a leak on Reddit for the new snow map, which I'm showing you here now. This is the map layout that was data mined from several files that were discovered in the game, probably on the test server. Not exactly sure where this came from, but this looks very legitimate and for all intents and purposes is at least the basic layout of the map as it stands. Now, I'm going to go kind of in depth on this. I'll be going a little bit longer on it. So my initial thoughts and everything is that I don't know anything about this map, and I don't want to get too much into the theory crafting of as to how much it will, how it is going to be laid out, where the buildings are going to be, the terrain, that kind of stuff. All we have is this kind of topographical map showing where the major points of interest are. So Wacky Jackie's already made a video about this, going over his thoughts, so I encourage you to go watch that as well. He makes some great points, and I'll kind of repeat some of them, so excuse me if I get too deep into his territory here. So the first thing, obviously, it's snow. It's a white map, and it actually looks like as you get from north to south, the terrain kind of changes, which makes sense because the northern part of the map has this frozen portion of the river that divides it essentially into 1/3 and 2/3 on either side, not to mention all the bridges that are featured here as well. And as you get further south, the snow starts to dissipate, which would be similar in climate to a place like Sweden, where the north is much colder than the south, or any other, place in the world where there is snow and it gets less snowy as you go south. And then there's major features of interest around the map as well, denoted in yellow. And as I kind of enhance and kind of look a little bit into these yellow spots, they do seem to be covering cities. It's a little bit more opaque down here. You can see there's a lot more buildings involved down here. It's not just one big area. But this, I would imagine this place to be, in the picture in my mind is, do you remember Inception? When they're in that guy's dream and there's that big snow fortress? This is kind of what it seems like to me. Is like a military style fortress with like maybe a dome or some kind in the center, and then you have like exterior buildings, that kind of stuff. And then you have your standard issue kind of like Novo style with the docks and the crates over here and a little bit over here as well. So, similar to what we see in Sanhok, like those small dock towns, that kind of stuff. That's what I'm expecting. Here is a little bit of a different story. This might be more of a, I don't know. I don't know what this is going to be. It's probably a tall structure. Wacky Jackie mentioned that. You can see how the cliffs are a little bit more distinct on the north side. I'm not going to get too much into that. I think Wacky Jackie definitely covered a lot of that in his videos, his video regarding this. But I want to talk a little bit more about the additional things that we've learned from the data mine file. So we're going to move a little bit away from this for now and take a look at the C4 as well as some of the other stuff that was mentioned. So this is actually a more interesting map. This kind of, this must be a true leak of some kind. I'm going to bring this up a little bit for you. But this is more of what it looks like with the terrain, like the actual mesh of the terrain included in the diagram. So we have the proposal map here. We have the Dior Otok. That's probably, we've seen crazy names in the past as far as Savage. That name changed later on, so I wouldn't anticipate this to be the same. But this shows exactly what I was talking about, how from north to south the terrain differs a little bit. So still a 6x6 if we count 1 2 3 4 5 6. 1 2 3 4 5 6. So essentially the playable area is a 6x6. The map itself is an 8x8. That's the same as we've seen in Erangel and Miramar, but the actual playable area appears to be 6x6, which is exactly what I personally wanted from this next map. Savage is small and very fast-paced. Miramar is very large in landmass and slow-paced, in my opinion. Erangel is a nice middle ground, and in my opinion, still the best PUBG map is Erangel. But this has the potential to be somewhere in that middle between Erangel and potentially Sanhok as well. Probably more towards Sanhok than Erangel, considering how much the playable area is in that 6x6 square, whereas Erangel has a lot more. But definitely a good middle ground, which I think A+. I like that idea. So moving on to some of the other stuff that was posted, there are some things like the Beetle being teased. Now, this is all data mine stuff. You might not even be able to read this very well, and excuse me for that. But this is just game files being taken apart and inspected, and they're looking for things like model names, that kind of stuff. This could be, for all we know, a new vehicle, or it could be an existing vehicle, or something we might not even see at all. That's happened a lot, where we've seen models and assets leaked. Now, there are some assets in here that show the vehicle. So this kind of, to me, is a good indicator that we will see this, considering the stuff that's along the floor panels is rusted out. This looks like something you would probably see in a snowy climate. Again, German vehicle, maybe again set in Sweden, that kind of stuff. These things, to me, not that big of a deal. The idea that a transport truck would be a drivable vehicle, very unlikely, unless it's a. I imagine this to be a map asset. This seems to me more like a vehicle that you would see in the game. Beyond that, there are a couple other images that I think are interesting. The next one being C4. Now, I can't zoom in too much on this guy. Let's try our best, though. So the C4 model. Now, this could be a couple of different things. This could be a gadget that we can actually use in the game. This could be a crate item that is also a gadget, or it could be nothing. It could be part of a completely separate game mode. It could be like the riot shield, where we never actually see it, even though it's been teased. It may not ever find its way into the game, but I'm going to come back to the C4 in a little while because of some other things I noted on the map that we were just looking at. So there's a couple other map assets in here. Again, the style of the buildings, very European. I'm not an expert in architecture by any stretch, but I really feel like this is going to be like a Swedish area map. So the other thing that we were talking about is the night mode. So now we have weather clear, weather squall, which is like a storm kind of with rain around an ocean area. I'm sorry, I'm probably getting that all wrong, but the big one here is the night map. Now, this is a weather style. Before we get too much into the whole night map craze, which I think a lot of people have been asking for, I personally prefer clear weather. I think the night mode has a lot of potential, considering the terrain. I hope it is like a moonlight, like a very bright moonlight map that we've seen in like the Arma style, where completely clear, lit by the moon, but is overall dark. I don't think I would mind that too much, considering that a night map night mode would work best on a snow map, considering the ground is white. The players would be dark and moving, but if you basically can't have a night mode, in my opinion, outside of the snow map, because a night mode on Sanhok would be terrible. You would never see anybody ever. You can't really do it on Erangel for a lot of the same reasons. Miramar is a maybe. I think Miramar could definitely support a night mode, but the snow map gives you that contrast between white and dark, which is something very important if you're going to make something that's playable and feasible for the player, that isn't frustrating from the same way that Sanhok has with fog. I don't like the fog because it impedes vision. I would typically not like a night mode because it impedes vision as well. But on the snow map, we might be able to get away with it. So just again, scrolling through some of this, mostly just map assets. Again, you see the name of the map here. And a lot of new buildings. A lot of the stuff doesn't make it like we have a hedge maze. A bunch of other just basic map assets. And again, back with the C4. Now, the one thing that gives me a little bit of pause is a little detail in this, which is the content UI item weapon C4. Now, you'll see things in this category for things like the M4, the Car 98, and everything else. Everything that's listed in the item weapon category typically finds itself into the game as a usable item. Now, that is interesting to me. It looks like there's some other stuff here. This looks like to be a Chinese-specific market t-shirt. Happens all the time. I'm going to scroll through here. So this is the Skybox from the looks of it. We have this Sky Clear, and this is I think the transverse mode of being the clear skies at night. So this is, again, the full moonlight. I think that's an important aspect of a potential snow map. And we have some other stuff here. Maybe a missile silo, some other interiors. Anything else interesting in here? Okay, so I'm going to come back to this because I want to kind of tie this in with the C4 and then not so much the night mode, but I think the C4 is a big deal. Now I'm going to talk about why. I think PUBG, in order to grow as a game, does need to make changes, specifically around how the game at a base level is played. Now, I don't recall anything specifically in PUBG's history that would be as big of a change to the game as something like C4 would be. An explosive that can be planted and likely controlled from a distance is something that's going to be very impactful. Now, I think C4, out of all the potential gadgets that could come into PUBG, would be the best one for a couple of reasons. One, you need to be in clear line of sight likely to use it. Two, it makes for some interesting gameplay mechanics that could potentially affect the map as well. And while I'm on that subject, the one thing I notice a lot about this map in particular, and I'll try and blow it up a little bit bigger for you, is how many how many bridges there are along the middle of the map, and how many different areas there are you could potentially control. Now, C4 might just be added to the game as a pure gadget, maybe nothing really beyond that other than something fun to use. You can plant it on a crate, you can plant it on a car, you can plant it on a bridge, but you should, in my opinion, be within 100 meters or 200 meters of it for it to be detonated. You should be able to, I mean, it would be kind of funny if you could do it from anywhere on the map, but then it doesn't really have any use. So looking at the way the bridges are laid out, some far-reaching part of me thinks that potentially you could destroy these bridges with C4. Because there's so many that if it's in a crate, for instance, let's say you find C4 in a crate, the likelihood of you being able to blow up every single bridge and make that an issue is pretty small. But then there's the destructible aspect. Can you make a destructible environment? Can you actually destroy bridges? Or is the C4 for objective taking? Is it part of a new game mode? Is it part of war mode? Who knows? But in my opinion, let's just look at it from a baseline. What is C4 good for, and will it destroy the flow of the game? Probably not. And what it would be good for is just hijinks. Blowing up cars, setting them on bridges, that kind of stuff. I think is a little bit OP in the sense that if you can't find it on crates and you have to go looking for it, and you can find it in the world, if some guy is just constantly planting C4 on bridges on cars and blowing you up, that's not very fun. But as a pure gadget, me personally, I can see how C4 could be a good addition to the game. So I don't want to go too long on all this stuff, but I think that the mindset of the developers in this case is a little different than what we saw with Sandhawk and Miramar, is that it's a little bit bigger of a map. It's a little bit more dense. I mean, the one thing that I don't necessarily like is how many cities and towns there are. That was an issue on Miramar, and I hope it's not the same thing here. In the smaller environment, it might be better. Sandhawk has a little bit of the same, and I hope they've kind of taken that design philosophy with having small pockets of lootable areas, gives lots of people options instead of having specific, very high-density loot areas that draw people in and then lead to a slow mid-game. All of these things are a factor, but I really like the fact that it has appearing to be a different style of terrain. Like whereas Miramar, it's all desert all the time. Sandhawk is all jungle everywhere. This is a little bit more of a diverse terrain, which I think is really interesting. Not to mention the flow of the map. This being frozen, likely easily traversed. I would expect to see a snowmobile here, a couple other things. I love the size, but for as far as the C4 is concerned, I think that would be an interesting addition. I don't think it would break the game, but it would add a new element. From the competitive side of things, I think a 6x6 map is great for duos and squads. Don't know, because we've had Erangel for so long, so many tests have been able to be run on it, settings have been created, and typically pro players don't like new maps and try to avoid them like the plague for a bunch of different reasons, mainly due to the fact they're kind of curmudgeonly in some cases. But at the end of the day, this map is not just for pro players, it's for everyone. And believe you me, the pro players do not have as much of a say in map creation as you might think. Maybe you don't think that at all, but this is for all of us, specifically for us to play on. So I think that I'm excited for the map. I obviously need to see more. There's a lot of hypothesizing happening about how this thing will play out, but I would expect to see this map in November. No inside information, considering the timelines where we're at in the month, what's coming up with Fixed PUBG, all those other things. I would really expect to see this map be deployed for testing at the end of October or November for release in December or January. January 1st, or that January time frame, is the anniversary of PUBG 1.0. Maybe we're not necessarily at PUBG 2.0 level yet, but that time frame makes sense to me. I'm not going to take any more of your time. It's already 15 minutes in. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/wtfmoses and on Twitch at twitch.tv/wtfmoses. Any comments, of course, leave them down below. If you like this video or you like this style of video, hit that like button and come back and subscribe for more like this in the future. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch. I will see you at the next one, and until next time, I'll see you out there.